Hey everyone, welcome to another night of boring stories for sleep. Tonight, our journey takes us to the open seas and wooden ships, where we uncover how pirates really got rich. Before we get into our story, if you truly enjoy this content, please like this video, comment, and subscribe. Let me know where you are tuning in from and what time it is. It is always fascinating to see where others are tuning in from across the world. Now, get comfortable, enjoy the light sound of the fire crackling, maybe turn on some white noise to calm your mind, and let's dive in. You might think pirates made their millions by digging up chests of buried treasure, but that's more the invention of storytellers than the reality. Pirates didn't bury treasure, they spent it fast. Why hide your hard-won gold under a palm tree when you could trade it for rum, fine clothes, or a week of outrageous living in port? If anything, the only thing pirates buried was their self-control. Imagine the steady rhythm of waves against a wooden hull. Soft wood creaks, distant gulls in the hush of dawn. The ship rocks gently tonight, as if the sea itself is humming a lullaby. Its lantern light sways across the deck, and the scent of salt and tar mixes with the faint sweetness of pipe smoke. This is when the old hands like to talk about the good hauls, the big prizes that made men rich, if only for a little while. So how did pirates make their fortunes? For one, it was about targeting the right ships at the right time. The richest prizes weren't just gold and silver, though there was plenty of that, but also goods that could be sold for high prices. Spices like cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves, sugar by the barrel, cocoa, tobacco, and indigo dye, textiles from India, silk from China. Pirates didn't just rob, they moved product, sometimes even selling back to the very people they'd stolen from. Take Henry Avery's legendary capture of the Genghis Iwai in 1695. This Mughal treasure ship was so stuffed with gold, silver, and jewels that its haul has been estimated at the modern equivalent of over $100 million. Avery's crew walked away with enough wealth to make each man rich beyond his wildest dreams. Though the victory also brought the wrath of the Mughal Empire down on English trade for years. That was the double edge of a big score. Fortune now, trouble later. Or consider Bartholomew Roberts, also known as Black Bart. Between 1719 and 1722, Roberts captured over 400 ships, making him arguably the most successful pirate of all time in terms of numbers. His plunder wasn't just cash, it included fine clothes, rare wine, and a diamond-encrusted cross meant for a Portuguese governor. Roberts reportedly dressed in crimson velvet and a feathered hat when going into battle. If you're going to risk your neck, he figured, you might as well look like a king doing it. Of course, not every raid ended in glory. Sometimes, a rich merchantman turned out to be full of things no pirate wanted, like barrels of molasses or crates of chickens. There is a story of one crew that stole so many live fowl from a captured ship that the deck was unusable for days. You Haven T truly experienced piracy until you heard a captain trying to give an inspiring speech over the sound of 200 squawking hens. The pirate economy was surprisingly efficient. After a successful capture, the goods would be divided into shares, sold to fences. Black market merchants who asked no questions or even auctioned off right on the beach. In Nassau, buyers would gather as soon as a prize ship docked, ready to bid on anything from bolts of silk to barrels of rum. The pirates got their coin, the merchants got their goods, and the colonial authorities often looked the other way for the right price. Sometimes, pirates make fortunes not from attacking ships, but from not attacking them. This was called protection money. A ship's captain could pay a pirate to leave him alone. In some cases, pirates struck semi-official deals with governors, sharing a cut of their loot in exchange for safe harbor. It was corruption wrapped in the smell of salt air and gunpowder. Spending habits of pirates were legendary. Some splurged on elaborate clothing, embroidered coats, silk shirts, plumed hats. Others wasted it all on gambling tables or days-long drinking sprees in ports like Port Royal, Jamaica, where taverns reportedly ran out of rum more than once, thanks to pirate crews. One old saying in Port Royal went, "A pirate's gold lasts only as long as his liver." But even at the height of the Golden Age, making millions was rare, and keeping millions was rarer still. Naval patrols were growing faster and more aggressive, and a single unlucky encounter could mean the gallows. Many pirates who struck it rich spent their fortune in months, only to end up right back at sea, chasing the next prize. As the stories wind down, one of the older crewmen chuckles into his mug. "Richest I ever felt," he says, "was the day we took a Spanish galleon loaded with cocoa and sugar. Thought we'd made our fortune. Then we realized the hold was also full of weevils, and by the time we sold it, we had to throw in half the sugar for free just to get rid of the bugs." That's the thing about pirate millions. They were loud, fleeting, and rarely as shiny as you imagine. But for the men and women who lived this life, the rush of seizing them was worth every risk. In those moments, with the cannons still warm and the sails full of wind, they weren't just chasing wealth, okay? They were tasting the pure, untamed thrill of freedom, okay? Above, the moon slips from behind a cloud, and the ship sails on. Tomorrow, maybe, there will be another prize on the horizon. Or maybe there will just be the sea, calm and endless, waiting for the next fool brave enough to try to take from it. Now, close your eyes if you like, and drift with me to a time when the glint of dawn broke over endless blue seas, and the life of a pirate was not only about thunderous cannon fire or buried treasure, but the hum of daily routine humanity and unlikely camaraderie. Let's begin in the golden age of piracy, roughly spanning 1650 to 1730, when pirates sailed the Atlantic in Indian Oceans, and the world revealed a different, wilder rhythm of freedom and risk. Imagine you awaken aboard a wooden deck, the scent of salt in the air, the thrum of rigging above, and that first sip of grog. Tepid but comforting, warming your chest. The day begins quietly, cleaning the deck, tightening ropes, checking the sails, running drills when needed, and sharing stories in low voices. It was not all swagger. Life on board a pirate ship was strangely orderly and democratic, often more so than a navy ship or a merchant vessel. Pirates drew up their own articles of agreement. The crew collectively agreed on rules to keep order, outlined shares of plunder, and set discipline in place. These codes were legally binding in their world. Violations could lead to marooning, flogging, or even execution. Yet, the captain chosen was charismatic and bold, while the quartermaster, elected by the crew, had equal authority, sometimes acting like a Roman tribune, speaking for all. These checks and balances kept the fragile peace on a ship with limited space and unlimited tempers. Let's slip into a small, rocking cabin. Perhaps you're an eager landsman, newly signed aboard. You might hear the whisper of Bartholomew Sharp's diary, okay? He kept one in 1680, chronicling his raids along the Spanish Main with quiet precision. Or you'd trade tales of Alexander Exquemelin's eyewitness account of sailing under Captain Morgan remains one of the truest insights into pirate life. There's laughter too, of course. Humor helped overshadow the danger. Picture the quarterdeck alive with card games played quietly by lantern light. The sound of laughter like a lullaby to the sea. Sometimes a rigger and a powder monkey would prank each other. You might catch the powder monkey hiding a bit of powder in a hat, or the rigger tying a sailor as shoelaces together. Such annoyances meant more laughter than anger. When ships appeared on the horizon, the mood shifted. The soft laughter hushed as the lookout called out, "Sail ho." Hearts beat faster. Would it be a fat merchant ship full of spices and silver, or a navy man-of-war? Planning was whispered, the captain and quartermaster conferring, steely but calm. Let's pause on a moment from history. The infamous Henry Avery, known as the Pirate King. In 1695, he captured the Mughal ship Gunsway, a prize of unimaginable wealth. Gold, jewels, sapphires, worth millions in today's money. Avery vanished mysteriously. Recent discoveries revealed a coded letter dated 1700 suggesting he may have become a spy for the English crown, trading pirate life for a royal pardon. Imagine the still voice of a pirate turned secret agent, plotting in whispers instead of cannon blasts. Back on your ship, laughter returns, quieter now, but still there. The council meets to decide whether to share some of the treasure, or the governor pirates had a reputation for being egalitarian. But that idealism often came smelling of profit. Then, at twilight, you climb the ladder of rigging to your watch position. You feel the wind cool your skin. Stars emerge, distant and steady. The sea is quiet now. You stand your watch under a Jolly Roger, the iconic black flag. First, perhaps flown in 1700 by Emmanuel Wind, picking a skull, crossed bones, and an hourglass to remind you time is short. The flag is a signal. You are free, defiant. The sea is yours for the moment. And in that quiet, salt-sweet night, with waves lapping softly against the hull, you drift. A pirate's life was brutal, yes, but also democratic, structured, lyrical, full of laughter, whisper-soft routines, and bold choices. And now, perhaps now, it's time to drift into sleep. Picture this. The morning sun has just crawled over the horizon, and the sea shimmers like it's been brushed with molten silver. The ship smells faintly of tar, rope, and something that might once have been fish stew, possibly from last Tuesday. You stretch awake on your canvas hammock, and as you do, the ship rocks gently like a mother. It's cradling. Except your mother is a 90-foot brig armed with 12 cannons and a crew that thinks bathing is optional. Welcome to another day at sea. Life on a pirate ship was an all swashbuckling glory. The real routine could feel like a strange mix of summer camp, military drill, and occasionally mild chaos. The first order of the day was usually swabbing the deck, which meant scrubbing away salt, grime, and whatever questionable substances had appeared overnight. The job fell to anyone unlucky enough to be caught idle, or anyone who lost a bet the night before. And yes, pirates bet on everything. How long until the next ship sighting? Who could climb the rigging fastest? Whether that strange-looking cloud would rain before sundown. Meals weren't fancy, but they were surprisingly communal. Pirates often ate together in small groups, squatting on the deck with a wooden plate or shared pot. The menu: salt beef so tough you could use it as armor, or hardtack biscuits that occasionally came with bonus. Insects. Some crews even gave these little weevils nicknames. The theory was that if you treated your foods extra protein like pets, you were less disgusted eating them. And yes, even here, humor was the secret spice. Sailors loved to play pranks, especially on new recruits, sometimes convincing them the ship's cat could smell fear, or that certain ropes were ghost-haunted and best avoided after midnight. Now, imagine the sound of boots on the deck. A meeting is called. The whole crew gathered for a vote. Creas, as strange as it sounds, were pioneers of workplace democracy. Captains could be voted in, and just as quickly voted out. William Kidd's crew famously turned against him when they suspected he was becoming too cautious. His fate: arrested, tried, and hanged in 1701. His body left to rot in an iron gibbet as a warning. Talk about a bad performance review. But captains weren't dictators. Quartermasters often had as much power, deciding how loot was divided, settling disputes, and ensuring punishments matched the crime. If two sailors argued about stolen rum, the quartermaster might order them to duel, but with unloaded pistols, just to embarrass them. Still, discipline had a dark edge. Violating the ship's articles of agreement could mean losing your share of treasure, extra duties, or even being marooned left alone on a deserted island with nothing but a bottle of water, a pistol, and maybe a Bible if the crew was feeling merciful. Captain Edward England, though feared, once gave a marooned enemy a small tent and some food, earning a strange sort of pirate good guy reputation. Evenings were more relaxed, especially when anchored in pirate havens like Tortuga or New Providence. Here, the Pirates' Republic offered rum shops, gambling tables, and the occasional sword fight that started over who had the better hat. Blackbeard himself, Edward Teach, was known to tie slow-burning fuses in his beard and light them before boarding enemy ships, just for the terrifying and slightly theatrical effect. Imagine being the poor sailor on watch when a man walks through the smoke looking like he just stepped out of hell's waiting room. Of course, not every day ended in revelry. Storms could whip the ocean into a chaos of spray and wood-splitting wind. In those moments, the crew worked in grim silence, reefing sails, lashing barrels, and praying to survive. Some kept lucky charms sewn into their clothes, a coin, a scrap of fabric from home, or even a dried shark's tooth. The sea, they knew, took no bribes. Let's drift into one real tale. Mary Read and Anne Bonny, two of the most famous women in piracy. In the 1720s, they sailed with Calico Jack Rackham. Disguised as men for much of their careers, they could curse, fight, and gamble with the best of them. Legend says that when Rackham's ship was attacked in 1720, the male crew hid below decks, leaving Mary and Anne to hold off the enemy nearly alone. Imagine the scene: cutlasses flashing, pistols cracking, and two women in breeches yelling insults so fierce they might have stung worse than the bullets. And then there was the odd pirate superstition about whistling on deck. Supposedly, whistling could whistle up a storm, so it was bad unless you were cooking. For reasons no one has quite explained, whistling while making dinner was considered lucky. This meant the ship's cook was often the only person who could wander around cheerfully whistling without getting side-eyed. But perhaps the most quietly human part of pirate life was sharing stories under the stars. With the sails slack and the ship drifting gently, crew members would sit on the deck and swap tales, some about impossible treasure, some about lost loves, and others just made up on the spot. Sometimes these stories were half brag, half warning. One such whispered tale was about Stede Bonnet, the gentleman pirate, a wealthy landowner who abandoned his comfortable life for the sea. He bought a ship outright, no mutiny or theft, and set sail despite knowing almost nothing about navigation. The crew reportedly had to teach him how to be a pirate as they went. Think of it as the 18th century version of someone quitting their office job to start a YouTube channel about skydiving without ever having jumped before. By the time the night watch began, the sea's lullaby returned. The slow slap of waves, the soft groan of timber, the distant hum of a crewmate humming an off-key shanty. For all its danger, piracy could have a strange serenity, a floating village of rule breakers held together by their own strange logic, humor, and the shared certainty that tomorrow could bring either fortune or a fight. You breathe in the salt air, eyes closing against the creak and sway, and you realize, for all its hardships, this life has a rhythm that seeps into your bones. The sea is calm tonight, so calm you can hear the faint clink of a lantern swaying in the breeze. The deck beneath your feet feels almost still, as if the ship itself is pausing to listen to the stories it carries. You've been at sea for weeks now, and you've learned a truth few landlubbers ever understand. Pirate life was in tea all about constant action, In fact, most of it was long stretches of waiting, punctuated by bursts of chaos, It's a little like fishing, except when you catch something, it usually involves cannon fire, Between those bursts, you fell into the rhythm of shipboard chores. Mending sails was a near daily task. The ocean, with all its beauty, was a relentless tailor who enjoyed pulling at seams. Gunpowder had to be kept dry, food inspected for rot, and fresh water rationed carefully. A leaky barrel could cause more distress than a distant naval ship. So at least the naval ship didn't make your drinking water smell like vinegar. But the real glue of pirate life was the Articles of Agreement, the ship's own constitution. They covered everything from how loot was split. Usually, the captain got 2 shares, quartermaster 1.5, and everyone else 1 share. 2 compensation for injuries, lose a leg, that could earn you 800 pieces of 8. Lose an arm? 600. It was, in a strange way, one of the earliest forms of workplace insurance. Okay. Though the claims department was just the quartermaster with a ledger and a suspicious glare. Speaking of injuries, pirates weren't the caricatures of peg legs and eye patches for fashion's sake. Those were practical solutions to the very real hazards of boarding enemy ships and handling black powder. And, contrary to myth, most pirates didn't make people walk the plank. That bit seems to have been more popular in storybooks than in reality. The preferred punishments were more efficient. Maroning, keel hauling, which we won't describe too vividly if you're trying to sleep, or simply tossing someone overboard without ceremony. Still, there was room for wit, even in the face of danger. When Blackbeard blockaded Charleston in 1718, he famously demanded a chest of medicine in exchange for lifting the blockade. Okay. Some say it was for his crew's illnesses. Others whisper it was to trade with smugglers. But either way, it's proof that even the most feared pirates sometimes played the role of maritime pharmacist. And then there were the days when the ship slipped into port. Tortuga, Port Royal before the earthquake, or Nassau during its Pirates Republic years. Nassau, in particular, was a curious place. Equal parts trading hub, safe haven, and open-air party. Here, pirates rubbed shoulders with merchants, smugglers, escaped slaves, and even the occasional off-duty soldier willing to make a little side money. You could hear shanties spilling out of taverns, see makeshift gambling tables under the shade of sails, and smell roasting meat competing with the ever-present temps of rum. The humor of port life was legendary. Stories tell of Jack Rackham, Calico Jack, challenging another pirate to a duel over a particularly flamboyant waistcoat. The duel ended when they both realized neither wanted to stain such a fine garment with blood. They settled the dispute the pirate way by getting so drunk they forgot what they were arguing about. But life ashore carried risks, too. It was in Nassau that Woodes Rogers, the governor appointed to clean up the island in 1718, arrived with royal pardons for any pirate willing to give up the trade. Some accepted. Charles Vane did not. Vane famously sailed right out of the harbor under Rogers' nose, firing a mocking broadside on the way. This blend of audacity and mischief was the very heartbeat of piracy. Yet, storms loomed, not just the kind that rattled the masts. The early 1720s marked the slow collapse of the Pirates' Republic. Naval patrols grew more aggressive, colonial governments less tolerant. The Royal Navy, learning from its mistakes, began stationing ships in key channels and deploying faster sloops to chase down pirate brigs. Blackbeard himself met his end in 1718 at Ocracoke Inlet. Imagine the scene. Dawn light breaking over the water. Royal Navy sloops bearing down, musket smoke curling in the air. Blackbeard fought fiercely, reportedly sustaining more than 20 wounds before he finally fell. His severed head was hung from the bowsprit of a Navy ship as a warning. Guy, it didn't stop piracy overnight, but it did make quite the conversation starter in port. Even with such danger, humor remained a survival tool. Pirates knew that if you couldn't laugh at your luck, the sea would do it for you. A well-timed joke could break tension before a boarding action or distract a crewmate from a homesick night watch. And sometimes, laughter was the only answer when the cook announced dinner was, once again, salt pork and weevil biscuits. As you stand on deck tonight, the stars crowding the sky like spilled silver dust, you realize you've grown used to this life's odd mix of freedom and discipline. Tomorrow, you might chase a fat Spanish galleon, or you might spend the day patching sails and telling stories. Either way, you'll face it with the same combination of caution, courage, and just enough humor to keep the sea from swallowing your spirit. You lean against the rail, listening to the water sigh along the hull, and think, maybe this isn't just a chapter in history. Maybe this is how freedom sounds. The wind tonight is a low, steady hum, like the ocean is softly clearing its throat. The ship glides over gentle swells, lanterns casting golden halos on the deck, their lights swaying with the rhythm of the waves. It's in these quiet stretches between ports and plunder that the stories come out. Some are proud retellings of victories. Others are half-whispered regrets. And some are just ridiculous. One old bosun, leaning on the rail with a mug of watered-down rum, tells you about the time a crew nearly scuttled their own ship because they mistook a floating log for a sea monster. It's not even the strangest tale you've heard. This was an era when many sailors still believed in mermaids, and the manatee glimpsed at dusk could become the stuff of legend by nightfall. But as the 1720s wore on, these light-hearted moments grew rarer. The so-called golden age of piracy was beginning to tarnish. Naval patrols increased, governors tightened their grip, and old havens were becoming traps. Nassau, once the loud, laughing heart of the Pirates' Republic, now had a governor's flag flying over its fort. You hear the name Woodes Rogers again tonight. His presence loomed over this decline. A former privateer himself, Rogers had once been a hero for rescuing castaway Alexander Selkirk, the real-life inspiration for Robinson Crusoe. But in Nassau, Rogers was no storyteller. He was a hammer, sent to pound the Republic into order. With the royal pardons in one hand and the fleet in the other, he convinced some pirates to give up the trade and hunted the rest. Out everyone folded. Charles Vane, fiery and stubborn, refused to pardon. His ship was sleek and fast, and for a while, he made a game of taunting Rogers' authority, slipping out of harbors, burning prize ships within sight of the fort, and disappearing into the blue. But even he couldn't outrun fate. In 1721, betrayed by his own men and captured, Vane swung from the gallows in Port Royal. The age was closing in. Even the legendary Calico Jack Rackham met his end around this time. Captured in 1720 while anchored off Jamaica, Rackham's trial was swift. His crew's defense was not exactly airtight. Mary Read and Anne Bonny famously told him, "If you had fought like a man, you wouldn't be hanged like a dog." And yes, they said it to his face. Pirates were not known for sugarcoating their opinions. But life on the water didn't stop entirely. Some pirates adapted, turning back to privateering when war flared between nations. Others slipped into smuggling, trading in tea, tobacco, or human lives. The romantic image of the freebooting outlaw faded, replaced by quieter, more dangerous work. Yet, even in the final years, pirate ships remained strange islands of democracy in a world that often had little of it. Crews still voted on their captains, still split shares according to the articles, still gave injured shipmates compensation, a far cry from the brutal discipline of Navy or merchant vessels. Some historians say this was the true legacy of piracy. The idea that even in the roughest, most lawless corners of the world, quote, people could govern themselves fairly if they agreed to it. Of course, the fairness only went so far. There was still mischief. Like the time a crew decided their captain's new hat was too fine and passed it around until everyone on board had worn it while the captain was sleeping. When he found out, he didn't punish them. He started a tradition where the hat had to be worn by the person who caught the smallest fish that week. There were also quieter forms of rebellion. When naval patrols grew heavier, some pirates began using false flags, not just the Jolly Roger, but actual national flags, to pass as harmless merchants. Blackbeard was a master at this, sometimes flying a French or Spanish flag until the very last moment before revealing his true colors. It was part deception, part theater, and possibly part sheer enjoyment of the dramatic reveal. By now, you've learned that pirates, for all their violence and risk-taking, had a gift for finding the humor in their own lives. They needed it. The work was hard, the dangers constant, and the rewards fleeting. A prize ship could make you rich for a season, but one unlucky broadside could take it all away. So you laughed when you could, sang when the wind was right, and told stories when the night was calm. Tonight, as you lean against the rail, the bosun's log monster tail fades into the sound of the waves. Above you, the sails catch the moonlight. Below deck, someone is softly strumming a battered fiddle. And for now, in this fragile pocket of quiet between the past and whatever tomorrow will bring, you feel the strange peace of knowing that you are part of something that is already becoming legend. The dawn is pale and gentle, painting the horizon in soft washes of gold and rose. The sea is glassy, the kind of morning where even the gulls seem to glide instead of flap. It feels peaceful, but there's a quiet finality to it, like the last chapter in a well-worn logbook. By the late 1720s, the golden age of piracy was slipping beneath the waves. The Royal Navy had learned its lessons: faster ships, better patrol routes, and no more giving pirates room to regroup. The pirate havens of the past, Tortuga, Nassau, Port Royal, were either under tight control or, in Port Royal's case, literally swallowed by the sea after the earthquake of 1692. It was as if the ocean itself had decided it was time to clean house. The great names fell one by one. Blackbeard's head swung from a bowsprit in 1718. Bartholomew Roberts, the dashing black bard, was killed in battle in 1722. His crew captured and many hanged at Cape Coast Castle. Calico Jack Rackham was tried and executed in 1720, leaving Anne, Bonnie, and Mary Read as the last fiery embers of his story, though even they disappeared from the record, slipping into history's quieter corners. Naval governors made examples of captured pirates. Trials were public. Hangings were staged like grim theater. In London, execution dock became infamous for displaying pirate corpses as warnings. It's hard and hung in iron cages until the sea took them. In the colonies, gallows stood at harbor mouths, so incoming sailors knew exactly what awaited lawbreakers. Yet, despite the grim endings, something strange happened. The legends didn't die, they grew. Stories spread in taverns and along docksides. Its captains became larger than life, their real deeds embroidered with daring escapes, buried treasure, and secret codes. The truth that pirate life was often tedious, brutal, and short was polished into something far more romantic. The image of the free-roaming rogue, laughing into the wind, was too alluring to let go. Some of this myth-making came from books like Alexander Exquemelin's Buccaneers of America, which mixed first-hand accounts with just enough drama to keep readers hooked. By the 19th century, novelists like Robert Louis Stevenson would all but replace the real history with tales of maps marked with X's and parrots squawking in the rigging. In reality, parrots were rare monkeys and cats were far more common shipboard companions. But you have to admit, pieces of 8 sounds better than feed the cat. And then there's the Jolly Roger. While the black flag with skull and crossbones was used in the early 18th century, it was just one of many designs. Black Bart's flag showed a skeleton holding an hourglass and a spear. Edward Lowe's depicted a red skeleton. Christopher Moody's was bright red with an hourglass arm and dagger. The idea that all pirates flew the same skull flag is more the work of Hollywood than history. But the symbol stuck, simple, bold, and just threatening enough to echo down through centuries. Even their humor survived in the stories. A sailor still tell the one about the pirate who, after losing his hand, was given a hook and promptly used it to stir the cooking pot, prompting a week of complaints about iron-flavored stew, or the tale of the captain who ordered his crew to dye their shirts red, so blood wouldn't show in battle, only for the first mate to suggest everyone also wear brown trousers, just in case. The truth is, pirates left behind more than stolen gold. They left an idea, a whisper that there was another way to live outside the rigid rules of empire. That crews could vote, leaders could be chosen by merit instead of birth, and profits could be shared, so that people from different nations, races, and backgrounds could work together, not out of idealism, but necessity. In the rigid world of the 17th and 18th centuries, That was quietly revolutionary. Of course, it wasn't a perfect utopia. There was violence, there was cruelty, there was greed. But there was also a strange kind of freedom, quaint, that most sailors would never taste again once the last pirate sloop was run down by the Navy. As the sun climbs higher, you picture the ghosts of those ships, Blackbeard's, Queen Anne's Revenge, Roberts's Royal Fortune, Avery's Fancy, slipping over the horizon, sails fat with wind, crews laughing in defiance. They're gone now, swallowed by history and salt water, but their shadows still move in the stories we tell. And maybe that's the real treasure they left us. It's not gold, not jewels, not chests buried under palm trees, but the enduring sense that somewhere, out beyond the sight of land, there's a horizon that belongs to no one. And if you're brave or foolish enough, you can sail toward it. For now, you lean against the rail, the waves whispering against the hull. The deck creaks softly beneath your feet. The wind tugs at the sails, and for a moment, you can almost believe the golden age isn't over at all. It's just waiting for the right tide to rise again.